Okay, so it's just after 1 o'clock on Tuesday lunchtime. Thank you everybody for giving up your lunchtime to join us on our webinar about coaching jobs and separation. I'm really pleased to be joined by Amanda Gardner today from Reset Divorce Coaching. And we're going to be talking about, as it says on the tin, how coaching can help clients, but also us as practitioners during separation and divorce. So I'll hand over to Amanda so that she can introduce herself.
All right. Hi, Alison. Thanks for having me. Right, I thought I'd just sort of talk a little bit about who I am, where I've come from. So, Amanda Gardner from Reset Divorce Coaching and the Divorce Hive. I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. So, I'm a professional coach. I have a postgrad coaching qualification in business and executive coaching from Leeds Beckett University, and I'm a member of the Association of Coaching. So I've been coaching senior execs within the professional services field for about 12 years. And then a few years ago, I went through a pretty nasty divorce myself and recognized that there was a space for coaching within that process. About that time, the Divorce Coaching Academy launched their divorce coaching training course here in the UK, which I understand to this day is still the only one formally recognised by sort of Resolution and the Association of Coaching. So I did that and started working with individuals who were experiencing divorce. So the idea was to sort of provide practical advice and emotional support for those people who could maybe achieve a faster, less costly, and less painful divorce process. My clients tend to come from all walks of life, men, women, and different stages of divorce as well. So they might be right at the beginning of the process and wanting to talk about what does this look like? What are the things I might want to consider? They might be right in the thick of it, working with a legal team and feeling a bit overwhelmed by the process. Or indeed, they might have got through it and now be thinking, what now? What's my purpose? What do I do with my life? Alongside coaching, I also train family lawyers how to use coaching skills to optimize the service they offer their clients. And I run the Divorce Hive, which is a support community for midlife female divorcees in particular. And that's because I think, maybe it's because I was one of them, that that group of women are perhaps most adversely affected by divorce, often coming out of long-term marriages where they may have given up careers to raise families, and they're left thinking, what now? What's my purpose? And the Divorce Hive is all about creating that second act and having a real purpose and a fantastic post-divorce life. So that's an online community, group coaching, and a book club. So aside from that, I've got 3 daughters and they're all doing GCSEs or A-levels this summer. So it's a bit mad in my house and we are looking forward to spending the summer in Italy. But thank you for having me
That
on.
sounds great. So I've been a divorce practitioner for many, many years. When I first started, there was no divorce coaching. There was nobody to support clients going through what has to be said for most people is a really traumatic time of their lives. And always had a box of tissues on my desk, and we would always support clients through that process. So I've actually found that having specialists like you who can help clients with the emotional side of things to make a big difference, because they then come to us either already in the right place, or we can say to them, we're not entirely sure you are in the right place, and have you got external support? So is coaching, I think, has made a difference for clients, but and how have you found, working with family law practitioners?
I love working with family law practitioners. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think divorce coaching is a fairly new concept in the UK. I think in the US, it's more established and the benefits are more widely accepted. But maybe if I talk a little bit about what it is, maybe that would help explain where we come from. But I suppose a good place to start is around what is coaching generally, because I think it's misunderstood. And I suppose the best way to describe it is a facilitated conversation, a guided conversation, one-to-one, which helps an individual think through what they're trying to achieve or how they're trying to optimize their situation. So that could be things like their performance at work, or it might be about trying to achieve some kind of life goal. And what coaching does is offer a space where that person can explore all the options available to them without judgment or restraint. And then think about, okay, what's my direction of travel? And then finally put a plan together to get them there. So that's coaching. Divorce coaching is all of that, but with an added layer of emotional support. So a divorce coach, as you kind of implied, can offer a space or hold space for a client who may be really experiencing a turbulent time. And it's a safe space for them to explore what's going on for them. I think it's about being, so divorce coaching in particular is about being a kind of neutral thinking partner. And what I tend to do is work with clients on emotional, financial, and the logistical complexities that they might be facing as a result of the process. Practically, it's one-to-one sessions. They last about an hour. Before we get into that, we usually do a meeting to see if they like me, if they feel they could trust me, if they think I can help them. But I also think it's important to think about what it's not. So divorce coaching is not therapy. Therapy is often more involved in the emotional deep healing, and it tends to look backwards and look to correct something. But coaching is forward focused and solutions orientated. So we're trying to get you from A to B. Divorce coaching is not mediation either. So mediation, obviously, you've got one mediator trying to work with a couple to help them find common ground, common solutions. Divorce coaching typically works with one party and represents that one party. And most importantly, divorce coaching is not legal advice. So I don't offer legal advice. Instead, I work with my client to support them to work effectively with their legal team. So I think it's really important, actually, that coaches stay in their lane in that respect.
Well, I think it's interesting. You just touched on something which I was going to ask you, actually, the difference between coaching and counselling. And, I think counselling is where you're sort of looking back and what the issues have been and how they need to be resolved. And as you say, coaching is more about moving forwards and where you want to get to.
Yeah, it is more, I think that's the main difference, is that it is much more forward focused. And both have a part to play. If you need therapy in the divorce process, that's a very different thing to divorce coaching. It's not either or. One's going to really help you emotionally heal. The other will offer you emotional support, but we're not going to the depth of the healing that a therapist might.
Okay. So in terms of collaborating with solicitors, etc., do you sit in on meetings with clients, or what does the collaboration look like?
No, I mean, I typically wouldn't sit in with a legal team and a client. My work's in the preparation. So we work with things that I would help a client process their emotions healthily, so that when they get to you, they're not in a place where they're driven by fear, sadness, or anger. We also help them sort of stay calm and objective so that they can make decisions, know their priorities, be rational. So I'm getting them ready to come and see a lawyer.
Okay. So, and does it cover specifics? So do you talk about, for example, child arrangements, or what they're looking at in terms of future housing, things like that? Does it cover practicality?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely it does. I think the child arrangements, again, it depends on whether there's legal proceedings going on. If there are, then I would defer to the legal team. But if there aren't, then that's a part where a divorce coach can play a huge part, supporting a client with negotiating with the ex, arranging co-parenting agreements, dealing with conflict over children, but also being a single parent. That's a big life shift for many people. You're parents, and now suddenly you're a single parent. That's a major shift. So supporting them with confidence, with places they can get information and support as well.
Okay.
Practically, sorry, Alison, practically things like the
So,
house. Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with clients on what sort of house am I looking for? Where would it be? What are the things I need to consider? But also practicalities like money. So many people that I work with have never had to deal with money. So just again, boosting their confidence around how to pay bills, do an effective budget, maybe get a good financial advisor that can help them with planning, that kind of thing.
okay. Just before we carry on, I should have said at the start, if you've got any questions, we will take those at the end, and you'll find along the bottom box. So do please put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. That would be really helpful. So in terms of dealing with clients who are in quite a high conflict situation, are there any sort of tools specifically that you use? Because I would imagine you see a lot of angry people, very upset, not just emotional, but sort of angry about what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I'm coaching somebody who's very angry, it's first of all about making that person feel heard. So often that's the problem. No one's listening to them. They're really angry and they feel like nobody's listening. So just really trying to understand what the problem is and then shrinking it. So what does that actually mean for you? What are the solutions you could come up with? How do we move past this anger? What is that anger doing for you? How is it serving you? Typically,
Okay.
it's not. But often clients just need somewhere to vent. And I suspect a coach might be a better place to vent rather than a lawyer. But
That's
you get a
true.
bit of that as well, right?
Absolutely right. So, any areas that crop up regularly in terms of when people come to you, the sorts of things they want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's sort of six main areas where clients seek coaching support. One of them is around emotions. How do I deal with this? My life just imploded. How do I deal with grief, anger, stress, anxiety? Stress and anxiety, we can offer them actual tools and techniques to manage that process. They're often short-lived, but it's also around building confidence. So when you're in this process, there's no handbook to divorce, is there? It's no like, oh, that's the right thing to do. So what I find with clients is they often don't know. Now I've got this choice or that choice. How do I know what's right for me and my family? And the coaching process will allow them to explore that and then have some confidence in their ultimate decision. So about emotional support and mindset, that's really the first area, and a positive mindset for the future, because the other thing is people often arrive in coaching thinking, my life is over. This is a disaster. And of course, it's not a disaster, it's an opportunity. It's perhaps not an opportunity you wanted, but it's here. So let's grab it and run with it and see what we can do going forward. I think the second area is around how do I make decisions? How do I get clarity? How do I figure out what it is I want, what my values are, what my priorities are in this process? What's worth fighting for? What am I going to let go? Also, I help them with getting ready emotionally for difficult meetings, which might be meetings with lawyers, mediators, might be court appearances. So whilst I'm not getting involved in the legal detail, getting somebody emotionally prepared for that, I think is helpful for them. We talked about the third area, which is around co-parenting, practical guidance and planning, so the finances, where they're going to live. Creating a roadmap for the future is another area. So what does life look like after divorce? And that's a really important one, because if you can have some sense of where you're going, then you can get some momentum up to get there, which prevents the case from getting too stuck in sort of emotional gridlock. So those are the areas that I typically help in.
Okay. I mean, you know, I know from our perspective, if someone has spent some time with someone like yourself, when they come in and talk to us about the legal side of things, they're much better prepared and come at it from a more factual standpoint. And the emotions then don't tend to take over. Yeah, it can happen, of course. But I think if they're getting that support, that makes a difference and helps them make some decisions. Because, you know, we obviously can't advise a client as to what's best for them. We can only say to them, actually, these are the options from a legal perspective, and then, you know, they have to take a view. So if they've explored then those options with you, hopefully they come to a decision that they're then comfortable with and can live with.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people don't understand that limitation of lawyers or the legal team. I didn't. When I first went to see a lawyer, I just thought, great, you're going to sort my entire life out for me. And of course, that's
We
not how it
try, but it
works.
doesn't quite work like that.
No. So I think that it is about a bit of an education piece as well, you know, taking some responsibility for your own life, and coaching helps you do that, because you're there thinking, okay, I've got this great legal team who are going to get me financially okay and through the process, but that still means I've got to be a parent, still means I might have to change my career to support myself financially. It still means I might have to move house. I'm going to have to figure out what fun looks like now that I'm not part of a couple. Which is a big thing, right? That's the thing everyone forgets, how to have
Yeah.
fun. So we build that into a plan. Self-care is another area. So how do you take care of yourself through this process? And particularly for mums, they tend not to want to do that. They're focusing on everything else apart from themselves. So how do you take care of you, put your own oxygen mask on first through this divorce process? What's
Okay,
your
interesting.
experience of divorce coaches, Alison?
Well, as I say, I've always found that clients who have that as a resource are just in a much better place in terms of having discussions about the legalities. You know, as I say, when I first started, there wasn't the ability to refer someone to a divorce coach, or for a client to actually seek that advice. And so we were everything to the client that came in. And obviously that's not our training. Our training is to deal with the legal side of things. And so, you know, it's great in the last, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, that these other professional services have come into play. And that can only be for the better in terms of the client, because you know, part of it, I would think, is client goes through the process and has the outcome, and then they have to live with that outcome. And you know, whilst we tend to stay in contact with clients for a while, we're not then supporting them through their further life. Whereas you doing what you do, clients can stay with you and continue to be coached moving forwards for as long as they feel that they need to.
Yeah, they can. They tend not to. If I'm doing a good job, they need to be getting rid of me as quickly as possible. But yeah, hopefully not too long. I mean, it's interesting because I think coaching generally has become more mainstream. So in the 12 or so years I've been doing it, certainly in the corporate world, now anyone who's anyone has got a coach. I think divorce coaching is a little bit behind the curve, but it's coming. And I think as long as we, as a community, act professionally and with the client's best interests at heart, then that will just continue to be the case.
Okay. So obviously I know from personal experience that you also work with lawyers and try and interleave what you do and help lawyers understand how to manage clients who are going through that emotional process. Do you want to talk a little bit about the sort of training that you've been doing with lawyers?
Yeah, so I think because I have a kind of a unique sight on it because I coach from executive level lawyers who work in this process. And so I understand to a degree the stresses and strains that they experience, but also obviously working with the client as well and seeing the process through their eyes. That put me in a position to say, how could we improve things with the use of coaching skills? So I offer a coaching for lawyers training course, which teaches lawyers some basic coaching abilities around things like active listening, making sure that your client feels heard and valued and that they trust you and they can build a good, effective legal relationship with them. We do things like powerful questioning. So how do you optimize the way you ask questions for a client? So again, that they feel as though you've got their back, you can move them forward. Within that, we've also got some coaching tools around how to have a conversation, boundaries, how to protect yourself professionally by establishing effective and creating and protecting those boundaries. So it's a half-day training course, which has been very well received to date.
Well, I can, as I say, speak from personal experience. Amanda very kindly came in and did this course with my team. And as much as it helped us understand what you provide to clients, I think also the benefits were for us as individuals and as practitioners, particularly in terms of boundaries and managing how we feel, because it is or can be a very stressful job. And therefore to be able to manage that, but also to understand about how you phrase questions in the right way, depending on the situation that the client is in, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, and that was really helpful with your team because there was such a wide range of experience as well. So even people who'd been working in the industry for sort of 30 years, I think left hopefully with some so they took something away from the training course, which is great. That's a great achievement.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've got a whole raft of questions coming in. So I'm going to, in no particular order, just throw these at you if I may. The first one says, can a client seek a divorce coach at any stage of the divorce process, or is the most favourable time at the outset?
No, they can do it at any stage. As I said, I get people who haven't left their marriages that are just thinking about it and they just want to look at what reality might look like. They might be in the process. If they're in the process, that's probably most common when they just feel a bit overwhelmed, or I get a lot from family law referrals. So that's when a lawyer's got involved, I need to get you some extra support. And when they're done looking, that's slightly different. That's more about post-divorce coaching. But yeah, anytime.
Okay. But is there an optimum time, do you think, in your experience?
I mean, always with coaching, the earlier the better, because you're going to avoid getting yourself in a mess, making mistakes, and you're going to go into the process with some tools and techniques which support you and serve you well as you go through it. So the earlier the better, but there's no problem later.
Okay. Okay, so the next one, it actually says average client size. I'm assuming that means in terms of what clients have in terms of issues. Presumably, you can help anybody with any sort of issue that they have.
Yeah, because coaching, I don't need to be an expert because what I'm doing is facilitating another person's thinking. So typical issues, I could have somebody a dad who's not able to see their children and coping with that, both from a practical and emotional standpoint. I might have a middle-aged mum or wife who is divorcing somebody who's much more financially powerful. And so perhaps she doesn't have the legal support that he does. That's another area. We do co-parenting agreements and how you might talk about that. Very difficult relationships where there's been infidelity and how you try and get past that to negotiate a divorce and how you're going to parent. I mean, as you know, as a lawyer, the issues are so wide-ranging. But yeah, I could sit here for 20 minutes and talk about examples. That would be
So, I mean,
definitely.
okay. I mean, sometimes the tricky thing for us is if we speak to a client and it's obvious that having some emotional support through the process would be a good idea. You know, we always try and say to clients, have you got someone that's supporting you, family, friends, or a professional? But if someone doesn't, in your view, what's the best way for us as practitioners to be able to say to somebody, actually, we think you would benefit from this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this comes up all the time. I think every family lawyer I meet asks me this. And so I've sort of come up with 3 or 4 ways of doing it. The first one is really about normalizing it, right? So you might say something like, divorce isn't just a legal process, it's emotional, it's a life transition. Many of my clients might find that working with a coach helps them stay clear-headed, it helps them make better decisions. It might be around a specific challenge that your client is facing, so stress, decision making, co-parenting support, and you could say, look, maybe a coach could help you work through your options in this area, give you some tools and techniques that I can't. You might position it as a team approach. You know, my job's to get you through the legal aspects of your divorce, but a coach can support you in ways that maybe I'm not the best at, like processing emotions, communicating better, staying focused on your goals, that kind of thing. But the biggest one is the cost concern, because what a coach can do is help a client save money because they're not dealing with emotions in the lawyer's office, and they're much clearer about what they want. So they're making quicker, more informed decisions. So they're saving money, and that's the easiest way to sell in coaching to a client.
Okay. So actually, just picking up on that cost side of things, how does that work in terms of the services that you offer?
So it's a per session fee. I can do individual sessions of an hour to 90 minutes, or I prefer really to sell a package because coaching is a bit cumulative. So first session, probably not going to walk away with a great deal of value. Third session, it starts all coming together. So I tend to sell a group of 6 sessions. And before that, as I said earlier, we do a discovery call, which is a free conversation just to see if we can work together. Within my package, I also add in a couple of SOS calls. So I'm sure we've all had those from clients where there's something dreadful's happened and they just need to speak to someone for 20 minutes. So they've got a couple of that within the package as well.
Okay, fantastic. And do you find yourself in a situation where you see clients and you have to make referrals to other professionals, lawyers, accountants, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. I mean, many clients that come to me won't have a lawyer yet, depending on where they are in the process. Often, the most often I see when I'm referring to a family lawyer is where they think they don't need one. And we'll work through why I think they might need one, or some of the things they might consider before making that decision. That's increasingly the case with services like Amicable coming around. I think people believe that that might be a better option, and for some, maybe it is. But I think I'd always encourage most clients to at least have a conversation with a family lawyer. Financial advisors, I mean, absolutely, they're always getting referrals from me because typically in divorce, we need to look at things like pensions, investments, mortgages, all the financial suite. So I'm always sending financial advisors work.
Okay. So to pick up on the questions coming in, is there a good open-ended question to get a client to open up?
About what?
Well, presumably if you have, or it says if you think someone is going through a divorce? Is there a good open-ended question to get them to open up about it?
So I mean, it depends from what angle you're coming from. As a coach, I would literally just get them to start speaking. So I might say, what's going on for you? How does that make you feel? What's the worst that can happen?
And this all, I mean, and we, obviously we touched on this when we did some training. This is all about open questions and closed questions rather than
Yeah.
questions where the answers are just yes or no.
Yeah, and you don't want to say why. Why is not necessarily the best questioning word. Why are you here? Oh, no, I don't know. I'm scared. I don't want to know why I'm here. And they can get quite defensive. So a why question is not necessarily a good one. How, what are better. But it would be interesting to see who put the question, where they're coming from. Are you a lawyer? Are you a mediator? Are you a client? So it really depends what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. Okay, so the next one. Actually, someone has asked for the 6 areas of concern that you mentioned earlier. And what we'll do is obviously we'll put our contact details up in a minute. So if you've got any questions or you want that sort of information, either email Amanda or myself, and then we'll respond to you in that respect. So the next question we've got is, have you seen noticeable differences in clients' emotions as they progress with working with you and their view of the situation?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if that weren't the case. And typically you see that in the first session because people really want somebody who's got their back and who's listening to them. And as soon as someone starts to feel heard, they relax. Okay, I've got someone who's in my corner who is here to support me, and support is crucial as you go through divorce. So yes, 100%.
Okay. And we talked earlier about you wouldn't normally sit in on a lawyer's meeting with the client. Is there much overlap or contact between you and the lawyer in any way, or is what you're doing completely confidential and you don't share it with anybody else?
So it does depend on the relationship I have with the family lawyer. So the session with the client is confidential, as is yours with your client. And I think when I work with a family lawyer, we know what to encourage the client to raise to the other party. So for me, if anything comes up that looks like it might have legal connotations or even might do, I'd encourage my client to discuss that with Alison or whoever. And vice versa, if you have an issue where you've got someone who might be saying to you, I'm not sleeping, I'm really not coping, I can't make decisions, then you could say perhaps this is an area you could discuss with Amanda.
Okay. Okay. Next, okay, this is quite a wide question. What is your best piece of advice for someone who wants to go into a coaching career?
Ah, oh, that's a hard one. I think if it's divorce coaching, you need to be realistic that this is a growing market, and it's not going to be people knocking down your door asking for divorce coaching. You've got to get out there, make sure you've got a niche, make sure you are selling your benefits. You also have to be a really, really good coach. My work comes from referrals from family lawyers and word of mouth, not from any other source. And so you need to be good at what you do. You need to put yourself out there. And I personally think you need a really solid coach training background, not a Groupon training as a divorce coach, please.
So, and when you talk about the training, do you mean solid coaching training before you move into the divorce world?
So I have that. I have a master's in coaching,
Mm.
and that for me has been invaluable. That's my USP. There aren't many divorce coaches that have a high level coaching qualification. Other people, though, so there are some amazing divorce coaches out there who are ex-lawyers. I mean, you're not going to get better than that. That's amazing. They know exactly what they're talking about. So they bring a different thing to the table. Sorry, I've sort of gone off piece. What was your question? Should they have, yeah, should they have coaching before divorce coaching?
Yeah.
I would think, yes, I think so. But the
So
divorce
that's a good
coaching,
basis.
it's a good basis, but the Divorce Coaching Academy course is a good one. So if you don't have that and you want to have a look at how do I train to be a divorce coach, then I'd recommend those guys.
Okay. 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 What is the most common scenario where you've had to set boundaries, and how do you go about doing that?
So working with emotions, and I will often have somebody who attaches to me as their support mechanism. And that's really difficult then when they face a difficult situation for them not to just pick up the phone and want to speak to me. So I have to establish boundaries with that, otherwise I'd be on the phone all the time to upset clients. And what I would do is establish those boundaries right at the beginning of our relationship by saying, this is how we work together. We work together in session. If you need to book an SOS call, you need to give me 24 hours notice and we will have a 20-minute SOS call. I'll communicate with you via WhatsApp if that's appropriate and in this time frame. So I establish those boundaries and then I hold them. So I don't answer the phone, and that might seem cruel, but my clients then understand what to expect from me. They know what the boundaries are, and it makes them feel more comfortable.
Okay. And I think maybe the last one, unless anybody else taps in. As a practitioner, what are good questions to sensitively ask a client when you suspect they may be going through a divorce? I suppose, well, it doesn't actually say this, but I think the implication is so that you can then feed in the suggestion that maybe they would benefit from a divorce coach.
So as a practitioner, someone's not told you they're getting divorced and you're trying to find out if that's what's going on.
Yeah, it doesn't actually say that. It just says, questions to sensitively ask a client. I suppose it goes back to the point of, if we were endeavouring to suggest to someone that they come and see someone like yourself, the best way of doing that, which is always a tricky thing.
So I think there's sort of two answers to that. One is if someone's not telling you, they're not ready, so I wouldn't necessarily push them. If you want to test the waters, you might, well, as a coach, I might say something like, my sense is there's something happening here. Do you want to talk about it? So this is sort of very vague because we don't have enough detail to ask the question, but what else might I ask? No, I'm not really sure. I don't think we've got enough information to ask a sensible question. I don't want to give out a silly question just to say something. So whoever that is, I'm very happy to send you something. If you can give me a bit more detail on email, I'm more than happy to send you some questions to ask.
Okay, and you'll find our contact details on the screen there, guys, if you need to contact us. Okay, so finally, anything else that you think would be helpful, any takeaways for people that have joined us today? I can see in terms of attendees, we have professional practitioners across the board, actually, financial advisors, divorce lawyers, etc. And we also have, I think, probably some people who are experiencing difficulties in their life right now, and therefore whether they're considering coaching or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're in that process, divorce coaching offers you another person in your team to get you through the process as quickly as you can, in as much of one piece as you can. And if that's a resource you can access, then absolutely go for it. if you're a professional, then it's around raising awareness. And that's why Alison and I do these causes, because divorce coaching is a growing part of what's going on in the divorce world. And the more I can raise awareness about it, the better. So very happy to have one-to-one chats and explain how we might work together.
Okay. And as I say, if people could, presumably you're very happy to sort of take questions on a more confidential nature through
Absolutely.
your email address there.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that, Amanda. I think it's been really insightful. And thank you for answering the questions, complete spectrum of questions. And thank you, everybody, for joining us over your lunch break today. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.